Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irarangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere ake nei, protesters gather outside Auckland Hospital amid chaotic scenes inside. Baby W's parents claim their son was kidnapped for life-saving surgery. We bring you the latest and talk to an expert on the spread of disinformation. A deal's done to cut Rotorua emergency motel accommodation almost to zero. The Mayor's live with the details. A house auctioneer who rejects a higher bid. Hard to imagine in this market, so what are the rules? He was on death's door, she saved his life. Now they're fast friends, sharing hot chips and picnics by the ocean. It ain't what you might think. You can watch us live, Sky Channel 83, Freeview Channel 50. RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Ahi Marie, good afternoon. I'm Evie Ashton. Te Whatu Ora says Auckland's Starship Hospital has stepped up security as it continues to care for the baby whose parents are refusing urgent heart surgery. The couple don't want the blood of people who may have had the COVID vaccine to be used for the surgery. Last night, the police were at the hospital after the parents obstructed medical staff from doing pre-surgery checks on the 6-month-old. Te Whatu Ora says with the high-profile nature of the case, including gatherings outside the hospital today, it's stepped up security to maintain safety. It says an individual was trespassed from the hospital earlier this week. A bioethics lecturer says the parents who've threatened to lay criminal charges against medical staff have little basis. Josephine Johnston says there also appears to be little basis for the couple to lay a complaint with the Health and Disability Commission if it were to happen.
I have not seen anything in the public domain, any information to suggest that there's been any, malpractice or anything that could form the basis of a complaint against the hospital or against the clinicians involved.
The baby is under guardianship of the court and a surgery was scheduled for today. The long-term future of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter is looking more positive. New Zealand Aluminium Smelter Chief Executive Chris Blenkiron says he has been talking to power generators about continuing Tiwai's operation beyond 2024 when its current power contracts are due to expire. Business reporter Nona Peltier has more.
Mr. Blenkiron says he is utterly focused on a future for the smelter, which has been on the brink of closure over the past few years. He says he is hopeful of keeping the smelter open and is determined to position it as a responsible environmental guardian, particularly in response to concerns raised about pollution at the site. He says the company will clean up that mess whether or not the smelter continues to operate. And if it does stay put, he says the smelter could become a foundation customer for a green hydrogen facility proposed for Southland.
Rotorua residents say the new agreement promising to reduce the town's emergency housing near zero brings more questions than answers. This morning, Housing Minister Megan Woods signed an accord with Rotorua Lakes Council committing to increase housing supply and provide better support for those in emergency housing. Restore Rotorua chairperson Trevor Newbrook says the accord lacks detail.
The Minister talks about emergency housing to drop to near zero. She doesn't tell us how, and she doesn't tell us when this is going to happen by. Is this a 10-year plan? Is this a 1-year plan? I think it's a little disappointing.
Trevor Newbrook says the agreement doesn't bring anything new to the table and he'd like to see a time frame in place. The Police Minister says speed camera enforcement is an operational matter for the force. The police have changed the camera activation settings to make them closer to the speed limit. This has resulted in tens of thousands more fines. The Minister, Chris Hipkins, asked by RNZ if he was made aware of this previously, says from police updates he knows they've increased both speed enforcement and breath testing. He says he has confidence police are committed to reducing road deaths. And a report into the seismic resilience of hospital buildings in Aotearoa shows 13% are earthquake-prone. 103 buildings are rated below the 34% threshold of the new building standard. 31 of these are rated importance level 4, meaning they must be operational immediately after an earthquake or other disaster. Te Whatu Ora's Chief Executive, Magi Apa, says official guidance shows there's no need for immediate action. More than a third of all hospital buildings are yet to have an assessment reported. In sport, Dutch defender Virgil van Dijk insists the Netherlands are preparing for far more than just Lionel Messi ahead of tomorrow's Football World Cup quarter-final against Argentina. Messi has been Argentina's inspiration in Qatar, and he's aiming to cap his career by guiding his side to the trophy. The last time the two sides met was in a semi-final 8 years ago when an Argentina side captained by Messi won on penalties. Virgil van Dijk is ready should the result come down to spot kicks again.
We try to do as much as possible in order to be ready for it, but hopefully we don't come to that stage and we can decide the game before getting into extra time or penalties. But if it's there and the time is there, we have to be ready for it, and we practiced as much as possible.
Meanwhile, the Wellington Phoenix coach Ufuk Talay has enjoyed watching the World Cup but wants to get his side back on the park after a 4-week break for the global tournament. The Phoenix return to action in the A-League tomorrow, taking on Western Sydney and Wollongong. Talay says the team has made the most of the break.
On our back line and our defensive shape, and also what we do with the ball. So it was a mixture of things. Players tend to remember the running side of things, which is not a bad thing at all for me, but we worked them quite hard.
Tomorrow's match counts as a home game for the Phoenix. And after a year-long investigation, a US House of Representative committee has found the National Football League helped cover up decades of sexual misconduct at the Washington Commanders team. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, if you had told someone 150 years ago how well off the world would be now, they'd think it was paradise. So why does everything feel so broken? Economist Brad DeLong, on his big new book, Slouching Towards Utopia. Plus, Stonehenge keeps on giving. And Hugh Rennie on 150 years of misrule in the Chathams. Cook and Hillahoe, join me tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
We're on air on rnz.co.nz and on your mobile with the RNZ app. You're with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and a few showers. Some heavy and thundery in Auckland tomorrow, from Waikato to Wellington, including Bay of Plenty, Wairarapa and the Central High Country. Periods of rain or showers, a few thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon and evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, scattered rain today, partly cloudy tomorrow. Nelson and Marlborough, rain with heavy falls possible. Easing to showers for a time this evening and tomorrow morning. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, periods of rain with possible thunderstorms. Easing to isolated showers later tomorrow. Mainly fine weather for Canterbury. For Otago and Southland, scattered showers today, becoming fine tomorrow morning, but widespread showers with thunderstorms developing in the afternoon in Southland, Dunedin and North Otago. And Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, occasional rain developing tomorrow morning. It's just gone 7 minutes past 5. I'll have news headlines for you and any traffic news at 20 past 5.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Te Whatu order has boosted security outside Auckland Hospital to keep staff safe as it works to provide life-saving surgery for a 6-month-old baby. It comes as dozens of protesters sheltered from the rain outside Auckland Hospital this afternoon to protest the uplift of the baby. Late last night, there were tense scenes inside the hospital between baby W's parents, police, and the baby's medical team as the 6-month-old was taken against their wishes for pre-op tests, including a blood test and an X-ray. The baby's parents didn't want their 6-month-old son to undergo a blood transfusion from COVID-vaccinated donors. And the baby's been placed under the guardianship of the court. Our reporter Lucy Sear and camera operator Marika Habazi were at the protest today.
Around 40 protesters gathered in the rain near the entrance of Starship Hospital, where baby W's life-saving surgery had been scheduled for 8 a.m. this morning. Some held placards with anti-vaccination slogans, and others brought along young children. One protester made a speech criticising the court's ruling and expressed support for the baby and its parents. While the couple earlier consented for the surgery to go ahead, things took a turn overnight amid revelations baby W's parents had prevented doctors from taking blood tests and pre-op medical assessments. It prompted Justice Galt to issue an order to stop the obstruction. Justice Galt said their lawyer understood the couple had threatened to lay criminal charges against medical staff. A bioethics lecturer from Otago University, Josephine Johnston, says there appears to be little basis for the couple to lay a complaint with the Health and Disability Commission if it were to happen.
I have not seen anything in the public domain, any information to suggest that there's been any, malpractice or anything that could form the basis of a complaint against the hospital or against the clinicians involved.
However, Josephine Johnston says there's nothing preventing people from making a complaint, even if the basis for it is shaky. She says it's a shame that things have escalated to the point where the police have had to step in to enforce the court's order.
It's terrible for it to get to that point, but we actually have to have the ability to do police enforcement of court orders, otherwise we don't have the rule of law.
Meanwhile, Te Whatu Ora is yet to confirm whether the baby's surgery has gone ahead as scheduled today.
Meanwhile, a video filmed inside Baby W's Starship hospital room last night shows exactly how things unfolded. It's a distressing situation for all involved. At one point, there's at least 8 people in the room, including a family support person, police officers, medical staff, and another infant believed to be Baby W's sibling, and also an unknown person taking the footage. The video starts with 2 plainclothes police officers seated and talking with Baby W's mum and dad. They're perched on the side of the bed opposite.
Not going to allow the baby to sleep or have his pre-op checks before a surgery that's scheduled in that can't be changed. Well, it can be changed.
It's a cramped hospital room packed with baby bits and pieces, blankets draped over the cot and a stuffed toy. Pillows are stacked on the bed. It's relatively calm to start with. Then more police officers enter the room and it's time to take the baby for his pre-op checks.
No, don't do that, boys. Hey, don't do it.
Please don't do it.
Hey.
We're talking about the surgery.
You guys are criminals. You are criminals. You are conducting a criminal act here.
So with the pre-op check, it needs to happen before the surgery.
Hey,
it won't happen tomorrow.
We've been talking to you like rational people, and now you just remove. You guys are, you are criminals. You.
That's the parents you can hear. The mother is begging to go too. An officer tries to calm the situation and explain what's going on. By now, a doctor or nurse is in the room too. There's someone supporting the parents, at least one person filming, and up to 4 police officers, so at least 8 people. It is tense and feels claustrophobic. Baby W is taken from the room in the arms of someone who seems to work for the hospital, with police escorting her.
You are criminals.
Can you guys just give them some space, please?
You are a criminal.
Okay,
you will not be part of the surgery tomorrow. We do not authorise any of that.
I just want to tell you what's happening.
No, we're not listening to what you've got to say.
Why did you do that? He's going to be okay.
No, he is not going to be okay.
And we need to take him for his... Okay.
The mother's distress is obvious. She wants to go with Baby W. There are negotiations. 3 officers stand close by, observing but passive. The hospital staffer leaves as the situation gets tense.
You can do what you need to do, but I need to be with him because he needs to be with his mother. Please.
Mate, show your humanity.
Please.
Show your manners.
Please. I just need to...
We will talk to the hospital staff, okay? Now,
hey, what good's that going to do?
Shush. You can't just rip him out of the bed like that, please.
The hospital staff has taken the baby for the pre-operation checks, okay?
Yeah.
Against our will.
Shush.
That is in line with the order of the High Court. And they're doing what they need to do now tonight for the operation tomorrow.
I just need to be next to him. Please.
It's not.
Please.
We're prepared to work with you in that, but we really need to help.
Shush.
We need to be able to converse like we are now.
Can I just be there with him? You can do all of that stuff, but I need to be there with him.
Yeah, and that's something we can negotiate with the hospital.
Okay, let's do it.
One of the officers explains he is a dad too and can't imagine what the parents are going through. But Baby W's dad is not interested.
Real men don't act like this.
Sit down.
You guys, Hearing what I'm saying? Real men don't act like what you've just acted like.
A person with the parents says the nurse is now outside crying. The officer acknowledges nobody is happy to be there.
Hey guys,
You need to chuck your badge in.
yeah, hand it in right now and you'll have some decency inside you.
Baby W's mum leaves the room to find her son. His father has this to say.
Our baby has just been medically kidnapped.
Well, in a statement released in the last half hour, Te Whatu Ora says it has stepped up security at Auckland Hospital. Dr Mike Shepherd says it's been a difficult time for the staff and from time to time it is necessary to trespass individuals, and he confirmed an individual was trespassed from the hospital earlier this week. Dr Michael Daubs is co-director of the Internet, Social Media and Politics Research Lab, Kotahi, at Victoria University of Wellington, and has researched the spread of disinformation. He's been watching this play out and joins us now. Kia ora, what are your observations about the misinformation being generated by this case?
Well, there are two different elements that are at play here that are aiding the spread of this misinformation. One of them, which you could clearly hear in that last clip, is emotion. Certainly, a child facing a life-threatening situation is an emotional situation to be in. And one of the things that people like to do when faced with that kind of turmoil is get some semblance of control. The other element that aids the spread of misinformation in this area is the use of pseudoscientific language that sort of gives the impression of expertise. And you'll hear people that are spreading misinformation about the vaccine reference things like mRNA or spike proteins or inflammation that suggests that they have a kind of expertise that they really don't have. So when you have someone facing a distressful situation, hearing someone talk with what seems like authority about the vaccine, but saying that the vaccine is unsafe, it just makes that information seem more believable, and that's playing out in this situation.
How dangerous is it in terms of the platform that this case has been given? Because it's not just being watched locally, it is being watched internationally, and in fact some of the people involved have appeared on platforms that have enormous followings.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very serious concern about threats to public health and safety here when this information is shared, again, not just locally but internationally, and could potentially convince others that the use of blood from people who have been vaccinated is unsafe. And certainly when it gets into these large international platforms, the reach that information can spread exponentially. I mean, Alex Jones has a significant and incredibly loyal following, and they are playing into the emotion of this situation to further that spread of misinformation. I mean, Alex Jones compared what's going on right now in the hospital to Joseph Mendel, right? So the Nazi doctor, right? That's not a statement that you make if you're not trying to play on people's emotions.
Yeah, there's talk of medical experiments, comparisons to Auschwitz, and talk about the state stealing a baby. How do you push back against things that are clearly not true, but some people are believing?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. If you look at the psychology of the way that people believe and hold on to false information as truth, you see that even if you present them with irrefutable evidence of their belief being wrong, it actually ends up, in many cases, strengthening their belief in the incorrect information instead of convincing them of the truth of factual information. And part of that is the way that people react. When they're presented with something that completely conflicts with their understanding of the world, it results in a condition that most people are aware of called cognitive dissonance. And the way that we get rid of that discomfort of cognitive dissonance is through another process called motivated reasoning. So people choose the information that makes them feel better, and often what makes people feel better is to get rid of the information that's causing them that discomfort, which is the factually correct information. So they double down. Debunking, trying to present people with factually incorrect information often, in many cases, just simply doesn't work.
So what is the answer? Because you're painting a picture, sadly, that shows how incredibly difficult it is to turn this around.
Yeah, and if we had easy answers, I would love to share them. I'm not that smart, but there are some programs that are working right now that can help with that. One of the ideas now is called pre-bunking, which is just flooding and getting factually correct information out and publicly available in advance of those who are trying to spread misinformation for potentially personal and selfish reasons, but also information literacy, training people how to spot issues in information that are being shared, even small things like basic factual errors, typography errors, incorrect grammar, anything that might tip you off to the fact that the information that is being shared might not come from a reputable source.
Because that is interesting. That's interesting, Doctor, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but the thing is, when you look at some of the information, the disinformation and misinformation that is circulating, some you would argue is close to the truth, some is close to factual information, but and then there are these huge leaps as well, and they're all mixed in together. So as an observer or someone consuming it, how do you tell that you've gone down the rabbit hole?
Well, first of all, it's not a rabbit hole anymore. This misinformation is out in the public and is generally accessible to everyone, right? You don't need to go down a rabbit hole to experience this misinformation. But how do you know? I mean, the best thing to do, and you're absolutely right, first of all, is that this incorrect information is often mixed with information that is correct, which gives it, again, that sense of veracity, that sense of truth. But the best thing to do is to listen to experts in the field. And I know the issue with that right now is that there is a lot of mistrust of people like medical professionals, people in government, academics like me, journalists like you. And so we're really looking at the fact that we need a social program, not just in Rotorua, but in several countries throughout the world that rebuilds trust in all of those social institutions. And so what we're looking at is a long-term, almost generational effort to get people to believe in basic science again. And that's not a happy prognosis, but there are tons of people working really, really hard to make that happen right now.
Really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you for joining us. That is Dr. Michael Daubs, Co-Director of the Internet, Social Media and Politics Research Lab, Kotahi at Victoria University of Wellington. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback and your thoughts on this issue. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email address is checkpoints@rnz.co.nz. It's time for the headlines now. Evie standing by. Ko Evie anō tēnei.
Auckland's Starship Hospital has stepped up security as it continues to care for the baby whose parents are refusing urgent heart surgery over concerns about using blood from people who have had the COVID vaccine. Last night, the police were at the hospital after the parents obstructed medical staff from doing pre-surgery checks on the 6-month-old. The baby's surgery was scheduled for today. The head of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter says he's now utterly focused on continuing its operations. The company's owner has previously said the Southland smelter would close in 2024 before announcing early this year that it believes there's a long-term future for the plant. Now, aluminium smelter's chief executive, Chris Blenkiron, has told a business summit that it's possible the smelter could become a large industrial user of green hydrogen. A Rotorua lobby group says a new agreement promising to reduce the town's emergency housing to near zero lacks detail. Today, the Housing Minister, Megan Woods, signed an accord with Rotorua Lakes Council on the issue, but the chair of Restore Rotorua says the accord doesn't even include a timeframe. And US President Joe Biden is facing criticism over the decision to free a Russian arms dealer in return for basketball star Brittany Greiner. The Republican congressional leader Kevin McCarthy says the release of Victor Bout, widely known as the Merchant of Death, was a gift to Russia's leader Vladimir Putin and will put American lives at risk. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic in the Bay of Plenty, a crash near Oropi Road in South Tauranga on State Highway 29A is causing significant delays. They're asking you to please avoid the area if you can. I will have more news headlines and any other traffic news at 5:40.
Kia ora rā e ho. The general election is still a year away, but Hamilton West voters will tomorrow get a trial run. The bellwether seat tends to swing left or right in line with the wider public, but already Labour is trying to downplay the connection. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
A by-election born out of bedlam. Gaurav Sharma put Labour in a spin this year, going rogue. Now the contest, sparked by his resignation, threatens yet another blow to the ruling party.
I'm not going to hedge bets on outcomes.
We're going to keep fighting right to the end.
There are 12 candidates vying for the seat, but just 2 with any shot at success. The most recent poll, commissioned by the Taxpayers Union and conducted by Curia, makes National's Tama Potaka the favourite on 46%. Georgie Danzy from Labour lags behind at 33.
I guess Tama has to stop calling himself the underdog now.
Ultimately, the poll that is really important to me is on Saturday night.
ACT's candidate James McDowell's in third and Gaurav Sharma a distant fourth. Hamilton West tends to reflect the national mood. The former Labour MP Martin Gallagher held the seat for 12 years and agrees it's a snapshot of the country.
So let's pick an electorate that is most reflective of our nation as a whole. I'd say Hamilton West would fit that bill.
But Jacinda Ardern is loath to make that link.
As you've already heard me point out, in 2017 we won the election, but we lost Hamilton West. It is not always the bellwether people refer to.
And yet it almost always is. While Labour took government in 2017, National was still the most popular party nationwide. In fact, in all but one election during the seat's more than 5 decades existence, Hamilton West has been won by the largest party in Parliament. One might assume then tomorrow's result will reflect National polling, again giving National, led by Christopher Luxon, the advantage.
It's obvious in this country at the moment that people think the country's going in the wrong direction, utterly, totally in the wrong direction. It's no different in Hamilton.
There is a small wrinkle though. The Hamilton West seat has never had a by-election, and by-elections can be peculiar beasts. They're typically plagued by low voter turnout, and so far it's been even lower than usual, lagging well behind June's Tauranga election.
There's a lot of voter fatigue, frankly, having gone through local government elections.
There's a job for everyone to do to encourage those who are part of this by-election to make sure they go and exercise their vote.
Polling booths close at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. The first results are expected around 9.
Deputy Political Editor Craig McCulloch there. A deal's been done with the government to cut the use of Rotorua motels for emergency housing to close to zero over time. The controversial motel accommodation has been described by some as a bloody fiasco, a failed government experiment, and tantamount to child abuse. Resource consent was being sought for 13 Rotorua motels to keep operating as emergency housing for another 5 years. The agreement unveiled today is between the government, District Council and local iwi, and also promises to increase housing supply and provide better support for people in emergency housing. And joining us now is the Rotorua Mayor, Tania Tapsell. Kia ora.
Kia ora. It's been a big day.
A big day. So let's talk through some of the detail. What's the time frame to get to what's being described as almost zero motel emergency accommodation in your city?
So if we look at time frame just briefly, for the past 2 years we've had this. It has caused a lot of misery. You are right. The community's asked for action. Within 2 months of being elected, this new council has signed up to it. So the next 12 months will see a work plan to see us progressively looking to as zero possible motels being used. We did have some good news in the announcement today. We've got 20 less motels that were being used. 62 this time last year, 45 now. So we are on a good trajectory downwards.
So there is no time frame in this agreement. It's open-ended?
Well, you kind of have to take it as it comes. I think what's good is that we have had agreement by a minister, by government, that this is not acceptable in its current form, and we do need to find an end as soon as possible. I suppose it's a bit hard from a government perspective to commit to a date when we know that, if you look at interest rates alone, anyone with a mortgage or rent that keeps going up, it is very hard. We will see people continue to struggle and potentially need emergency housing, which is why we're not announcing it's a net zero straight away. We won't turn off the switch for them. We won't close the door on them. But what we will do is work together to make sure that when people, if they are in need of emergency housing, they will be Rotorua locals coming into our motels. And
understand that. But the whole idea of the agreement obviously is to advance your position. So also wondering, what is the definition of almost zero, which is the phrase that's used? What's almost zero emergency motel accommodation? How many is acceptable under that definition?
Well, Minister Woods today has said potentially as less as 3. The purpose for not being able to say completely no is just acknowledging that in some cases, and remember, some people that are placed into motels are there for all sorts of reasons, including escaping domestic violence. Women's Refuge put a lot of people into motels. So unfortunately, there will be a need, but, and here's the big but, the focus is on two things. Number one, stopping what is not working, which is motels. Number two, building appropriate homes, whether it's transitional or social housing, so that we no longer have to use motels. So eventually, yes, we should reach zero.
Yeah, so also contained in this agreement is to mitigate the unintended adverse social, cultural, economic and environmental impact of emergency housing on the community. That's one of the commitments. They're supposed to be doing that already. So what actually has changed under this deal? No real hard definition of what is almost zero, no time frame, and promising things that they're already supposed to be doing. What more have you got out of this?
Oh, no, I do want to say this is a significant change to what we've had. Before, we had a government that wasn't accepting that things needed to change, that, where else are we going to put them? So actually what you're seeing here is a significant step forward where the ministers have been brave enough to come to the table and say things do need to change, and we commit to doing that and allowing there to be a local solution. I think this is really important for us here in Rotorua. Everyone across the country has unfortunately only heard negative things about motels. So that summary of the social, cultural, economic, environmental, these are all things that we have felt intrinsically in the past 2 years. The social impacts have been horrendous. Economically, we were set to lose $92 million over the next year if it continued on our tourism dollar spend. So it has been so significant that we have actually come together with government and including our Te Aroha iwi partners to work together to find the way forward. So honestly, this is a huge win for us here in Rotorua.
Okay.
We will see visible changes within 1 year.
We're almost out of time, but I just want you to clarify, please. What happens with those resource consent applications to keep, I think it was 13 motels operating as emergency housing? What happens with that? Does that go ahead?
So, yeah, that's a separate process, and I believe I was told today something like the 16th of December is when it's expected, sometime before the end of this year. So haven't heard the decision from the independent commissioners back yet.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's the Rotorua Mayor, Tania Tapsell, on that agreement around emergency housing in motels. A 10-month ordeal in a Russian penal colony is over for one of the biggest stars in one of the world's biggest sports. American basketballer Brittany Greiner is back in the US tonight after a prisoner swap with a Russian arms dealer. After that was finally agreed, while sports reporter Clay Wilson joins us now. Clay, we're going to hear a bit more about this situation a little later in the program, but tell us more about Brittany Greiner.
Well, you mentioned that basketball's her sport, and she really is one of the big stars in this sport. She's considered by some people, in fact, to be the best women's player ever to pick up a basketball and play the sport. Helped by the fact that she's 6'9", she's more than 2 metres tall, so that obviously helps in a sport like basketball. But because of that height, she was a star as a child, and then pretty quickly went on to become a star as a professional. She was the number one pick in the WNBA draft when she entered that competition in 2013. She's won that WNBA title. She's an 8-time All-Star. She's won 2 Olympic gold medals, so it's a pretty long list of achievements she's racked up. But despite all the success she's had in the US and for the US, she has played in the European League since 2014. And the reason for that is that the WNBA players can make up to 5 times more money in their off-season playing in these European leagues like Russia as they can playing in America. It's a fight that's ongoing with the WNBA there in the US. So that's why she was in Russia in the first place, and unfortunate timing led to her obviously getting caught up there and held there in Russia. And now that she's back and safe in the US, one of the questions that's coming up is she going to play basketball again? When is she going to play basketball again? No indications just yet, but still only 32 years old and seems to be still fit and healthy and not affected really in any other way other than obviously the mental toll that an ordeal like that takes on you. So we'll see if she takes the court again, but it seems probable that she will.
OK, we've had a couple of days off the Football World Cup. I'm hopefully you're coping with that. But it fires back into life tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it seems a bit odd having a couple of days off when it's all rolling along. But yeah, quarterfinals this weekend, starting tomorrow morning. Brazil against Croatia and then Argentina against the Netherlands. Brazil been superb in their round of 16 win against South Korea. So they'll be favourites in that game against Croatia, and then Argentina against the Netherlands. Of course, the story here is Lionel Messi. Can he cap off his brilliant career with a World Cup triumph? And then on Sunday, Portugal against Morocco. Morocco upsetting Spain in their round of 16 games, so gunning for another upset. Portugal also very impressive in their round of 16 game, but they've got all that drama surrounding Cristiano Ronaldo floating around, and we'll see whether he starts or
whether
comes
he's
off.
Going to pack a sad, yeah.
Could see more unfold there. And then really the one with the most hype is the last one on Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, England against France, the old enemies. We know the history, of course, that these two countries have, not just in sport, but going a long way back in general. They were both really strong in their round of 16 games. You'd have to say France, probably based on results, have the slight edge there, but England, a lot of talent, and we know the enormous expectation that comes with that England football team when it gets to this stage of a World Cup. So, 8 teams left, and I guess this is the stage where it really starts to get pretty interesting.
You're going to have a really difficult dilemma. Do you catch up on Harry and Meghan on Netflix, or do you watch all of this?
I don't think that will be a difficult dilemma somehow.
Thank you, Clay. Have a great weekend. Clay Wilson. And speaking of that series, the first half of a much-anticipated series about the life of Prince Harry and Meghan has finally been released on Netflix. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex speak about life in the royal family, press intrusion and racism. So what have we learned so far? CNN's Max Foster takes a closer look.
Hi, so we're here on...
It's been billed as the first-hand account of the relationship between Harry and Meghan, their families and the media, and in their own words. The first 3 episodes of the Netflix docuseries on the couple dropped in the early hours of this morning, and it returned to some familiar themes.
And that sort of press pack of royal correspondence is essentially just an extended PR arm of the royal family.
Harry comparing Meghan's experience to that of his mother, Diana's. He feared she would be driven away by the media harassment.
As far as a lot of the family were concerned, everything that she was being put through, they had been put through as well. So it was almost like a rite of passage. And some of the members of the family was like, right, but my wife had to go through that. So why should your girlfriend be treated any differently? Why should you get special treatment? Why should she be protected? And I said the difference here is the race element.
Ultimately, Harry says, he had to leave the UK to protect his family.
I accept that there will be people around the world who fundamentally disagree with what I've done and how I've done it. But I knew that I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
Hey, Grandma. Yeah. Grandma.
Especially after what happened to my mum.
Yeah. That's your Grandma Diana. Yeah.
You know, I didn't want history to repeat itself.
We heard from Meghan's mother for the first time.
And I remember when I first met him, too. You know, he's just like 6'1", handsome man with red hair. Really great manners.
Harry says when he introduced Meghan to his family, they didn't think the relationship would last.
The actress thing was the biggest problem, funny enough. There is a big idea of what that looks like from the UK standpoint, Hollywood, and it was just very easy for them to typecast that.
The couple say they felt unprotected by the palace against a barrage of media attacks. The palace is yet to comment.
It is 24 minutes to 6. You can probably hear that chatter in the background and know who it is. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Yes, the mystery guest, not so mysterious, Nona Peltier here with business news. Hello, Nona.
Hot.
Now, the head of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter is focused on staying put in Southland. What's the latest you've got for us, please?
Well, we had a speech. I didn't get a chance to speak to him, although I did ask. Never mind. He spoke to the Trans-Tasman Business Council today, and he said he was utterly focused on continuing operations in New Zealand into the future beyond 2024, when its power contracts are due to expire. And the chief executive there is a guy named Chris Blankiron. Kind of goes Blankiron.
Yeah.
It's got the right name. Anyway, he said no, he wants to stick it out. He said the company is determined to be a good guardian of the environment, promised to clean up whatever mess they've made there, whether or not they stay. But if they do stay, he's saying that they could become a foundation customer for whatever green hydrogen project comes off in Southland. So, yeah, he's all fired up about staying there. He says that they provide between 1,000 and 2,500 jobs there. They see a future for themselves. They say that they export about 90% of the aluminium they produce there and 10% for the New Zealand market. So, yeah, they think it's a good deal and they think that they have a future. So they're talking to the power generators. Go figure.
Retail card spending. Now, this is interesting. Rose in November, but only slightly. I wonder if those figures are before or after we were told by the Reserve Bank Governor to stick our wallets back in our pockets.
You mean cool our jets?
Yeah, cool our jets.
Cool our jets. Okay, well, actually, I guess we did because so it only rose a seasonally adjusted 0.3%. That is hardly any change, considering earlier on we used to have these wild, volatile ups and downs. Only $21 million more in November over the month before, and that's despite those 3 big shopping days. You might recall Singles Day, that's November 11th. So 11/11 singles. Yeah. Also the alternative to Valentine's Day. No? No? Black Friday?
Yes, know that one.
Yes. And how about Cyber Monday? Ever heard of that one?
Say that one again?
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday, Singles Day, November 11th. Black Friday, the day after the American Thanksgiving, followed by the Monday, Cyber Monday. Those 3 shopping days you would have thought would have boosted the numbers, but no. Only 0.3%. And most of that was because people were spending more on consumables. That's groceries and liquor. There you go. Okay. So those are not the big ticket items. And that means that maybe people are really listening to what the Reserve Bank Governor has to say.
And in terms of numbers from the markets today, please, Nona.
I do have those. So we fell 21 points to 11,596. And that's kind of interesting because there was a bit of a more positive tone to the markets. They thought that the Chinese market might pick up pace. There was some caution ahead of what the Reserve Bank might say next. And let's see, the New Zealand dollar rising again today, more than half a cent against the US to 64.1 US cents.
64.1?
Yeah. Yeah. 94.3. I think that's about steady where it's been. And 52.2 British pounds.
Thank you, Nona. Ka kite, Nona Peltier there with Business News. It is 20 to 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback, as always, on anything you've heard on the program this evening. The text is 2101, or you can email us. It is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. And actually, someone has emailed us. Ian says, Dear Evie, great to see your pearls on the radio tonight. I think you're actually seeing them on the TV, but we get the gist. Great to see your pearls, Evie. Could you ask Lisa if she could wear some pearls on the last radio program before Christmas, maybe? Under advisement. Okay, I'll wait for the request and then consider my response. That, for Ian, would confirm to him that we are 2 of the classiest people on radio.
Lisa?
Up there with the Queen and the pearls.
Could you wear some pearls on the last day
Well,
of the
I'll
radio?
have to find some, Evie. So let me work on that and we'll come back to you, Ian. But it is indeed time for the headlines. Evie and her pearls standing by. Ko Evie anō tēnei.
A bioethics expert says the parents who are refusing heart surgery for their baby have little basis for laying a complaint about medical staff. The couple objected to using blood from people who may have had the COVID vaccine during the surgery. Last night, the police stepped in after the parents obstructed medical staff from doing pre-surgery checks on the child. Meanwhile, Te Whatu Ora says Auckland's Starship Hospital has stepped up security as it continues to care for the baby. The long-term future of the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter is looking more positive. The New Zealand aluminium smelter head says he's been talking to power generators about continuing the smelter's operation beyond 2024 when its current power contracts are due to expire. Rotorua residents say the new agreement promising to reduce the town's emergency housing near zero brings more questions than answers. Today, the Housing Minister signed an accord with the Rotorua Lakes Council, but the lobby group Restore Rotorua says the accord lacks detail and is disappointing. And 3 sets of Canadian parents suing the makers of video game Fortnite say their children would forego sleeping, eating and showering because they were hooked. A judge has approved a class action lawsuit brought by the parents who noted that the World Health Organization recognised video game addiction in 2018. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, normal peak hour traffic around the country. Meanwhile, in the Bay of Plenty, delays have eased after that crash near Oropi Road in South Tauranga on State Highway 29A. Crews have been on the scene to help clear that crash. I will have a full news bulletin and weather for you at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Evie. And it seems like we've opened the doors to the RNZ Staffer Appreciation Club. I should have said this while Clay was here, but someone's got in touch to say if there was a competition to pick the quintessential New Zealand bloke, I reckon Clay would be a front runner. He has that combination of Sir Ed Hillary modesty, outdoorsy classic looks and gentle humour. I wonder if he will wear pearls for the last show of the season. We can ask him.
We could give him a tiara.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. Otago is a step closer to the largest continuous cycle trail in the Southern Hemisphere, with the Kawerau Gorge Trail now getting the green light after objections in the Environment Court were settled. The 35-kilometre trail will link the highly acclaimed Dunstan Trail to Queenstown's network. Timothy Brown has more.
The Kawerau Gorge Trail will connect 2 of the country's most popular destinations for cyclists by linking Bannockburn on the outskirts of Cromwell and the Gibbston Valley, about 30 kilometres from Queenstown. Building the trail through the imposing Kawerau Gorge will be a challenge, but Central Otago Queenstown Trails Network Trust Executive Trustee Janine Wood says the more arduous task was just getting to this point.
This funding has been in place since 2018. So what's been embarrassing has been questions from Treasury wanting to know when is the project ready to go. So it's been held up with the bureaucracy of bits and pieces and consenting, but we're through that now, so that's really good.
The trail already has consent. However, an objection was filed with the Environment Court. The Trust and the objectors have reached an agreement and the trail can now proceed. Inland Otago is home to 5 of New Zealand's great rides, and this project is another step in linking them all together in one network from Queenstown to Dunedin. Ms Wood says the proposed vision is exciting.
Who knows what the Kawerau Gorge will throw at us once we get into the construction phase, but that's what we're about, is building great trails and get into places that no one's been in years and years. I mean, it's just stunning. Even I haven't been into lots of places. I've only looked from the other side of the road, so I'm keen to get in there.
It's hoped construction will begin mid-next year, and an optimistic 2-year timeframe means it could see its first cyclists in 2025. An increase in tourist traffic is great news for wineries and eateries in Felton Road in Bannockburn. Desert Heart owner Jane Gill says it'll benefit the Cromwell Basin.
It's a huge opportunity for whoever. Could be us. Depends on what shape those visitors are and what they're looking for. But I certainly see all sorts of opportunities for all sorts of people, from accommodation, more food opportunities. There's definitely going to be a lot more people. I mean, it's going to be an exciting ride.
Central Otago Mayor Tim Cadogan says one day connecting Dunedin Airport to Queenstown Airport by cycle trail is a very attractive possibility.
We're right in the middle of that here in Central Otago, and the growth that we've seen even from the Lake Dunstan Trail between Clyde and Cromwell has been phenomenal. 87,000 people rode it last year. So that's just a stream of gold coming into the district, as the rail trail's been for a very long time coming from Middlemarch.
Plans are also advanced to connect Wanaka to Cromwell by cycle trail and add another 13 kilometres to the missing section of the Roxburgh Gorge Trail from Doctors Point to Shingle Creek.
It is 14 minutes to 6. Kia amo tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Let's get to some of your feedback now. A lot of you getting in touch about the situation with baby W. This is the little boy who needs urgent heart surgery, and his parents now do not want that to happen. They've got issues with the blood from COVID vaccinated donors. Robin says the anti-vax lobby probably don't care about the baby. They just want attention to make trouble and push their own agenda. We don't live in a world with no risk. The medical fraternity here are doing the best they can under incredibly difficult circumstances. Marcia says, while the parents of the child needing heart surgery hold their beliefs sincerely, have they reflected at all about how fortunate they are to be offered this major life-saving surgery when in many other countries it would not be available, or if so, horrendously expensive? Another listener's got in touch to ask if we're able to investigate why cameras and phones were allowed in the room of the hospital where the Auckland baby requires surgery. Are there not privacy implications for medical staff who were filmed in the course of this? Yep, it's a very difficult situation for them, no doubt. And another listener says there are two kinds of people in the blood baby case. Those who are doing their best to save a life and those who have nothing better to do except to make it difficult for those who are saving that life. Do keep your feedback coming. You can text us on 2101 and the email address checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. She helped save his life and now they've forged a lasting friendship, seeing each other almost every day for the past 2 years. Merrin Fearless is a Napier fruit vendor and Casper, as he is now known, is a seagull. Merrin told me that she noticed him in a bit of a tangle near her Marine Parade stall and went to his aid.
Well, I sell fruit just on the side of the road, and I turned around and here's this gull sitting down by the tree. And that's a bit unusual. But anyway, I got busy and didn't pay too much attention. Came back into the car, door was open. And a little while later, he shuffled his way all the way over to me, to the door. And I'm looking down, and he's got nylon all around his legs. And I thought, oh dear.
So what did you do?
I got a towel on the third attempt, managed to grab him, and I was sitting in the front seat of the car, and I thought, oh, now what do I do? Oh, heck. And there was nothing of him. And then I look again, and oh, God, he had nylon from his feet right up. He couldn't bend his head, and he had a hook through his mouth. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I rang my neighbour across the road, Tony. And Tony came over with a pair of pliers and he cut the hook and extracted it. And I held him while he took all the nylon off his legs. So then I put him out on the paddock beside me, leading down to the sea with a Tupperware bowl with some water. And over the period of 3 to 4 hours, he just blew up. I mean, he must have been close to death. And he just expanded, I guess, like a balloon. And I went over to another neighbour. She's got a cat, the only one, and I got some cat food. So I gave him that. And as the day wore on, I had to go home. So I turned around and I said to him, well, I give you to God or I give you to nature. And I turned around and I put the boot down and I turned around to look. And he'd gone. He'd flown away. Unbelievable.
You are an angel, Merrin. You were his angel, and you've kept in touch, I understand. What happens now? Because the rescue was a couple of years ago.
He comes every day to me. He's been doing it for 2 years. He's here now.
What's he up
He's
to?
been here all day.
What's he up to?
Sitting, face into the wind, which is blowing a gale today, and he sits here all day waiting for me to feed him a little bit more.
Merrin, how do you know it's him? There's a lot of seagulls out there.
Oh, he's the boss. He comes out and he puts his head down, he opens his bag and crawls. And, my mummy, my food.
I hear he's quite a looker, Merrin.
Well, he's certainly looking better than he used to. No, he looks grand. He's got beautiful orange eyes and orange legs and the orange beak, and the feathers just blend, and you see no start or finish with the white and the grey. It's just quite beautiful when you look at them.
So what little treats do you prepare for him?
Well, I have a dairy on the way from Miani. I call him there and get my lunch and smokes and bits and coffee across the road, and he gives me free chips for the birds.
Oh, and we all know, Merrin, seagulls love a hot chip, right?
Yes. Well, I try to make them last as much as possible all day. Sometimes I'll buy an egg sandwich and share one of those with him. And the others, I don't just pick on him, but he does try to get most of it.
It sounds like he lives like a prince, Merrin.
Well, he's fat, he looks gorgeous, he's the king. Oh, and he's got a lady.
Tell us about the lady.
Well, I thought they were having a fight. And there was a lot of flapping going on and wings up and feet out. And all of a sudden, I can't say on air what happened, but it did. And I thought, wow, got himself a wife.
It's a love story, Merrin, on many levels. So he loves a hot chip, does he?
Well, he'd rather have other things. He'd rather have a ham sandwich. He's not too keen on muffins, gone off those. And he likes chicken. But we don't tell him it's chicken. We tell him it's something else.
Hey, so he's coming back to see you because you helped him out and you give him treats. What do you get out of the friendship, do you reckon, Merrin?
Oh, companionship. He's here all day. He's entertaining. My customers, those that know of him, ask after him and want to know which one he is. He's a bit of a talking point, and undoubtedly will be even more by the time we're finished. But this is about Casper, not me.
He sounds like a real dude because some people, they think seagulls are scavengers and, a bit pesky. What would you say to them?
They're brighter than you think they are. They are very bright. I mean, for a bird to do all that, that's quite outstanding. The brain is, much sharper than you think.
It's been an absolute delight talking to you, Merrin, and I think it's fantastic that he's there with you now. I really like that.
Oh, yes, he'll be here till I go.
So how many hours will that be, Merrin?
I arrive about between 10 half-past, and I'll leave about 5:30.
Wow, he puts in a full day then.
Oh, yeah. Unless somebody parks up the road for a picnic, and they do gravate down. But I've known him just to stay here anyway, just in case.
Oh dear, that's Merrin Fearless talking about Casper there, the seagull that she helped rescue, loyal to a T until there's a picnic up the road. American hard rock band Guns N' Roses is just the second international act to play Eden Park tomorrow night after Billy Joel graced the stage last weekend. Opening for the Sweet Child O' Mine performers is the band born and raised in Aotearoa who have gained international acclaim. Alien Weaponry is known for intensely energetic performances as they belt out heavy metal songs, often featuring lyrics in te reo. Tom Taylor spoke with them as they made their way from Wellington to Auckland.
What's going through your head when you step out onto stage ahead of one of the biggest rock bands in history? It's not a question many Kiwis can answer. But the three members of te reo metal band Alien Weaponry did just that at last night's Guns N' Roses concert in Wellington. Drummer Henry says he surprised himself with the way he felt before the show.
We're very used to doing shows at this point, but I kind of felt the nerves again for the first time in a while, which was, good nerves. Gets you amped up for the show, gets you nice and excited.
Guns N' Roses are on their first New Zealand tour since 2017, after COVID got in the way of planned dates last year. Henry says when Alien Weaponry's management brought up the possibility of an opening slot, there was no hesitation on the band's part.
Near the end of the European tour that we just did, let us know, hey, you guys are playing with Guns N' Roses. How do you feel about it? Do you want to do it? And we were like, hell yes, absolutely.
Despite nerves and a delayed start due to issues with the PA system, Henry says once the performance got underway, it went off without a hitch. It's a tight set at just 30 minutes, and although he loves sinking into a longer performance, Henry says the energy they bring makes up for it.
Especially the guys at the front, they're basically swinging their heads around the entire time if they're not singing, and I think all of us are feeling it a lot this morning, the sore neck.
While the band's ticked off many of New Zealand's top-tier venues like Western Springs, the band's guitarist and Henry's brother, Lewis, says tomorrow Eden Park steps it up a notch. Lewis is humble about his band's success. They recently won Best Rock Artist at the Aotearoa Music Awards for the second time. Aside from the hype that comes with playing on the same lineup as Guns N' Roses, Lewis says he's looking forward to having lots of friends in the audience. And after their performance, they intend to slip into the mosh pit.
We stuck around and we caught the chats and we caught Guns N' Roses as well. It was nice standing pretty front row centre for that.
But there's been no mingling with Guns N' Roses band members. Henry says although he'd be stoked to meet them, they didn't cross paths at the Wellington show.
I guess when you're a band that size, you have to be somewhat private, or you can find yourself in odd situations where you basically can't leave because you're being swamped with fans.
There's still some tickets available for tomorrow night's Eden Park show. Alien Weaponry then head to Europe early next year for a tour with French heavy metalist Gojira.
And staying with music, Celine Dion has been diagnosed with a rare incurable neurological disease known as stiff person syndrome. It's forced her to postpone dates on her European tour. In an emotional 5-minute video, the Canadian singer explained that it's been causing severe and persistent muscle spasms. The BBC's entertainment correspondent Colin Patterson tells us more.
The video lasts 5 minutes and she is so upset, trying to hold it together throughout. She delivers the message straight to the camera, wearing black, and actually does the whole thing twice, once in English and then again in French. And she starts off by saying how she's been struggling with health problems for a long time, but only now is she ready to share what's been going on. And she explains it's recently that she's been diagnosed with the neurological disease stiff person syndrome. She says it affects 1 person in a million, and this has been causing her severe and persistent muscle spasms. And the upshot of that is it's also affected her vocal cords, and she cannot sing in the way she used to at the moment. And she describes the hurt of having to postpone many of the dates of her tour, which was supposed to be starting in February next year. As for recuperation, well, she says she's working with a team of doctors and every day is having sessions with a sports medicine therapist to try and build back her strength. But she says it's a struggle, but hopes she is on the road to recovery.
Some quick feedback before the news at 6 on our interview with Merrin, who saved the seagull Casper. He was wrapped in twine. He had a hook embedded in his mouth. She looked after him. He comes back to visit 2 years on. How classic is Merrin, this listener says. She has warmed my heart. There is hope in this crazy world. Just perfect, this person says. Thank you.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening. Ngā mihi o te pō, ko Evie Ashton tēnei. Auckland's Starship Hospital has stepped up security as it continues to care for the baby whose parents are refusing urgent heart surgery. They don't want the blood of people who may have had the COVID vaccine to be used. Last night, the police were at the hospital after the parents obstructed medical staff from doing pre-surgery checks on the 6-month-old. Te Whatu Order says with the high-profile nature of the case, including gatherings outside the hospital today, security has been stepped up to maintain safety. It says a person was trespassed from the hospital earlier this week. An Otago University bioethics lecturer, Josephine Johnston, says it's a shame that things have escalated to the point where the police have had to step in to enforce the court's order.
It's terrible for it to get to that point, but we actually have to have the ability to do police enforcement of court orders, otherwise we don't have the rule of law.
Meanwhile, Te Whatu Order is yet to confirm whether the baby's surgery has gone ahead as scheduled today. Victims in court have spoken of how they were left numb, wet and dumbfounded after forestry slash caused massive amounts of water to destroy their farms in Tolaga Bay. Forestry company Earnslaw 1 was sentenced today in the Gisborne District Court following the storm 4 years ago. Our reporter Tom Kitchen has more.
In Queen's birthday in 2018, forestry/shore debris ran rampant down rivers around Uwawa or Tolaga Bay, blocking bridges and causing rivers to flood farmland. Earnslaw 1 initially denied the offending but then admitted it earlier this year, but has still disputed many facts. At the Gisborne District Court, Judge Brian Dwyer sentenced Earnslaw to pay $225,000 in fines to Gisborne District Council and a total of $130,000 in emotional harm reparations to several victims.
177 years of waiting is over for the people of Ngāti Manu, who will celebrate the return of a large section of their Bay of Islands whenua this weekend. Private landowner John McIntosh earlier sold the Otuihu Pā site to the Crown with an expectation it would be returned to Ngāti Manu as redress. In the 19th century, the Pā was a trading centre and home of Ngāti Manu chief Pomare II, who lived there with several Pākehā settlers. But in April 1845, the Crown seized Pomare, holding him as prisoner on board the HMS North Star as the Pā was raised. The land then ended up in private hands until now. Ngāti Manu Kaumatua Arapeta Hamilton says to be in the process of getting the land back is a huge moment for the iwi. He says the McIntosh whānau taking the time to learn about the iwi helped with their decision to sell. A report into the seismic resilience of hospital buildings in Aotearoa shows 13% are earthquake-prone. More than 30 of the total 103 are classed as critical to the country's disaster response. Kate Green has more.
More than 100 buildings have been rated below the 34% threshold of the new building standard, according to a report commissioned by the Ministry of Health. 31 are classed as Importance Level 4, meaning they are critical post-disaster infrastructure, like operating theatres and triage centres. 6 are located in high seismic areas, including the Inpatient Services building at Palmerston North Hospital. Others on the list are 4 buildings at Taranaki Base Hospital, 2 at Nelson and 2 in Timaru. More than a third of all hospital buildings are yet to have an assessment reported.
There are few options left for people wanting to book holiday accommodation over New Year, as a high level of demand in the regions means many towns are full. Batch Care Head of Revenue Nick Pearce says the central North Island, including Taupo and Rotorua, only has 10% availability left at New Year. The Coromandel, Lake Taupo, Queenstown, Wanaka, Bay of Plenty and Northland are already at capacity.
Last year was a very late booking curve, and people very much held back because of the Auckland lockdown. So sort of year on year, we're ahead of the game by about 10-15%. But this year is sort of panning out to be more like 2019. So it kind of feels like we're back to sort of pre-pandemic numbers.
Nick Pearce says only 100 properties are left out of 2,300 with availability on New Year's Eve. And the US has its youngest black mayor at 18 years old. Jalen Smith left high school in May. On Tuesday, he was voted in to lead the rural town of Earl, just west of Memphis, Tennessee. Jody Jacobs has the story.
A Democrat, the new mayor promises to improve the police force, repair the city's drainage system, and he also plans to bring a major grocery store to the area. The final vote result, according to the county clerk's office, was 235 to 185 in the town of 1,800 residents. It's time to build a better chapter for Earl, Arkansas, Smith wrote on his Facebook page, celebrating his victory. Smith plans to continue his studies at Arkansas State University as he juggles his mayoral duties with the hopes of someday becoming a prosecutor.
That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, New Zealand Surf Windows, a fabulous coffee table book to give away, and I'll be speaking to the author Warren Hawke. What to watch over the weekend with shortcuts and some fresh and admittedly obscure new music delivered to us by Finn Johansson in Out Lately, plus Country Life, Pacific Waves, and Friday Night Live with Dimmer at the Helen Young Studio in 2004. Join us on Nights with Karen Hay after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. We're on air on rnz.co.nz and on your mobile. You're back with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday for Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula. Cloudy periods and a few showers, some heavy and thundery in Auckland tomorrow. From Waikato to Wellington, including Bay of Plenty, Wairarapa and the Central High Country. Periods of rain or showers, a few thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon and evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, scattered rain today, partly cloudy tomorrow. Nelson and Marlborough, rain with heavy falls possible, easing to showers for a time this evening and tomorrow morning. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, periods of rain with possible thunderstorms, easing to isolated showers later tomorrow. Mainly fine weather for Canterbury. For Otago and Southland, scattered showers today, becoming fine tomorrow morning, but widespread showers with thunderstorms developing in the afternoon for Southland, Dunedin and North Otago. And for Te Kohu, Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, occasional occasional rain developing tomorrow morning. The time has just gone 7 minutes past 6. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Ngā mihi Evie, no mai hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. In breaking news, anti-vaccination lawyer Sue Gray has just confirmed to Checkpoint that baby W has had life-saving surgery. Ms Gray says she received a text message from the baby's parents confirming the surgery is finished and the 6-month-old is doing well. Just to repeat that, the lawyer for the parents of baby W has confirmed to Checkpoint that the 6-month-old has had life-saving surgery and is reportedly doing well. A house auctioneer who refuses to take a higher bid sound inconceivable? Well, apparently not. A Hamilton auctioneer has refused to accept an additional $500 bid on a house, choosing to sell it for less because it wasn't going to work for his commission. During the online auction, he indicates to the bidder that it needs to be a $1,000 increment. And despite several attempts to lodge the $500 bid during the final calls for the property, the auctioneer categorically refuses to take it. Listen to how it plays out.
Out she goes. At $490,000 for want of another bid, I'm giving you your chances. And I'm going to call it down 3 times. First call at $490. Second call at $490. Third one. $491. 2, 3. 493.
500?
No, I'm not taking $500 bids. I can't make out the commission on that. Thousands are good, but 500's not good. I know, but I'm not taking $500 bids. I've already got that confirmed. At 492's the call. Freeze your chance, lease. Here you go. Freeze the opportunity to move it through. At 492,000 down the back for the first call, not yours, lease. 400. What? Yes, I could, but I'm not. At 492,000. Second call, I've asked.
Well, the hammer finally falls at $492,000 with the extra $500 going begging. So we asked John Mowbray, head of Auctioneers, the Auctioneers Association, for a please explain.
Well, it's the old story, is the extra bit they're offering worthwhile taking? And in some cases, it's so minimal, it's ridiculous to really entertain the thought of taking such a marginal sum and such a big if the transaction is quite big.
People would think $500 is a reasonable whack, though.
Yes, but not on a 492,000 transaction. That's sort of less than about 1/10 of 1%. If I can work that out quickly, maybe I've got that wrong. But it's a very, very minor amount in that context.
So what are the rules? Can the auctioneer, are they at liberty to turn down your bid on the basis they don't think it's big enough, incremental enough?
Yes, the auctioneer controls the auction, and he has the right to refuse any bid.
There was no one going higher, though, right? So the person offers an extra $500. You could argue that would potentially encourage others to keep being engaged in the back and forth and gradually creep up. But when the auctioneer says no to the $500, that's it. It stalls.
Correct, but as I say, it's a bit like, how low do you go? I mean, if somebody bids $1. Are you going to accept that and keep going? I mean, you've got to have a reasonable bidding amount set, and in this case, the auctioneer decided it was $1,000. And other auctioneers may decide differently, but in general, I think that's a reasonable amount as a bidding step, and the auctioneer has the right to refuse it.
And does the auctioneer make that decision independently, or does it have to have been discussed with the seller ahead of time?
Usually it would be discussed with the seller ahead of time, but in some cases the auctioneer's got full discretion to do what he wants to do without consulting the seller.
Okay, so how does commission work? Because also that was one of the other things that came up. The auctioneer said, not worth taking your $500. My commission doesn't work on that, $1,000. So
yes, well, that was, I suppose, a flippant remark at the time, but it's actually a true one. He's operating on 2.5% commission, so we're talking about an extra $12 to the auctioneer for his commission. Now, he shouldn't have been worried about that aspect. He should have more focused on the fact that, in his opinion, the bid was too low in the increment, and he was looking for a higher bid, and I believe he did disclose that he wanted $1,000. The bidder refused, and so the auction closed.
But the way the commission works is it is a percentage of the total sale price, is it?
Yes, I understand in this case, real estate agents vary from time to time, but in this case I understand it was a 2.5% commission on the sale price.
Okay, so what other rules or barbs are there to watch out for in auctions that people may not be aware of? Because this one has surprised a few people.
Well, the important thing, I think, in an auction, we're talking auctions of real estate, is that if you are the top bidder, that's a bid accepted by the auctioneer. In general terms, it's common practice that you have the right to negotiate the sale for 48 hours after the auction has been passed in. So you do want to be in that position of being the top bidder. So there's no point in sort of holding back, thinking it's not going to sell, and you're not the top bidder, and you've got the opportunity to bid after the auction in a negotiation, because you will not have that chance for 48 hours.
But if you are the top bidder, you actually get a 48-hour window, because most people feel that they have to make a decision right there on the spot, in the side room, being negotiated with.
It helps that you do make a decision on the spot, because the vendors are there. The auction is just in the middle of closing, and I suppose everybody's expectations are live, if I can use that term. But the fact of the matter is that the real estate company running the auction will should give that top bidder the first opportunity to negotiate the sale.
And that's John Mowbray, head of the Auctioneers Association. An interesting one, that one. Is 500 enough? Would you take it or not? Let us know, 21081 on text, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. 14 minutes after 6, and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Released basketball star Brittany Greiner has touched down on US soil. She was exchanged in a prisoner swap for a notorious Russian arms dealer, Victor Bout, who's been held in an American prison for 12 years. Brittany Greiner was arrested at Moscow airport in February for possessing cannabis oil, and last month sent to a penal colony. CNN's Alex Marcourt reports.
The dramatic moment of the high-stakes prisoner swap. Brittany Greiner in the red coat walking towards the American plane. Coming towards them, State Department official Roger Carstens, accompanying Victor Bout, who was hugged by a Russian official. This new video from Russian state media shows Greiner leaving Russian detention and boarding the plane in the snow. Her passport returned, Greiner smiles, knowing she's heading home.
Are you ready for flight?
Yes. Congratulations again.
Back in the U.S., Greiner's wife, Sherelle, was invited to the White House.
Today, I'm just standing here overwhelmed with emotions, but the most important emotion that I have right now is just sincere gratitude for President Biden and his entire administration.
The release was the culmination of many months of negotiations with Russia.
This work is not easy. Negotiations are always difficult. There are never any guarantees. But it's my job as President of the United States to make the hard calls and protect American citizens everywhere in the world.
The WNBA star, who was caught with cannabis oil entering Russia, spent 10 months in Russian detention. But now she's spared from a brutal 9-year sentence in a Russian penal colony. U.S. officials said that the trade for notorious Russian weapons smuggler Victor Bout was finalized in the past 48 hours. Greiner was moved from her prison to Moscow before being flown to Abu Dhabi, where the exchange took place on the tarmac of a small private airfield.
I'm glad to be able to say that Brittany's in good spirits. She's relieved to finally be heading home.
The U.S. wanted to trade Bout for both Greiner and American Paul Whelan, but Russia refused. In an exclusive interview from his penal colony, Whelan told CNN he's surprised he wasn't included.
I'm greatly disappointed that more has not been done to secure my release. I'm happy that Brittany is going home today and that Trevor went home when he did. But I don't understand why I'm still sitting here. My bags are packed. I'm ready to go home.
Whelan told CNN that the Russians see him at a higher level than Greiner. He's been charged with espionage and sentenced to 16 years.
This was not a choice of which American to bring home. The choice was one or none. I wholeheartedly wish that we could have brought Paul home today on the same plane as Brittany.
The big question now is how to get Paul Whelan home, who the Russians will want in exchange, and whether the U.S. will be willing to do it. You could hear in that exclusive interview that Paul Whelan did with our colleague Jennifer Hansler that he is deeply frustrated. He says that today Russia got the better deal. The Greiner was exchanged for what he called a world-class felon. He said he believes that Russia is dangling him, Paul Whelan, over Biden's head, and that they will want something big in exchange.
US detectives in Idaho trying to solve the baffling murder of 4 college students 3 weeks ago are focusing their investigations on the driver of a white car. CNN's Veronica Miracol reports.
Police in Moscow, Idaho are now looking for a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra seen around the time of the murders near the off-campus home several of the victims shared. Investigators say information about the sedan and at least one person seen inside the car came from some of the more than 6,000 tips they've received from the public. Police say they believe whoever was in the car could have, quote, critical information to share, and they're urgently asking the public for any other details as they continue their investigation.
We still have thousands of leads and tips that we're working through. We're continuously making progress. We're interviewing people daily. So we're moving forward.
It's been almost a month since 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed to death on November 13th, and police have still not found a murder weapon or named a suspect in the case. Investigators are still looking at the victims' activities in the hours before the murders and have addressed speculation that victim Kaylee Gonsalves may have had a stalker.
From the tips and leads that we received, we were able to find a singular incident that we thoroughly investigated and determined to the best of our ability that it was not related.
Investigators continue to look into the possibility of a stalker. And now, as students at the University of Idaho head into their last week of the fall semester, roughly a third are choosing to stay home for the rest of the year.
German police are expecting to make more arrests as they uncover a far-right conspiracy to overthrow the government. 25 people have already been detained, but the total list of suspects could be double that figure. CNN's Fred Preitgen reports.
It could have been a January 6th-style insurrection in Germany. Violent protesters trying to storm German parliament in August 2020. One of the leading groups, the Reichsbürger, or Citizens of the Reich, now accused of plotting a coup in Germany. This is obviously one of the largest terrorist organizations that has existed in the right-wing sector in recent years, Bavaria's interior minister said. It certainly seems to be the worst we have seen so far in the spectrum of the Reichsbürger and QAnon scenes. German authorities say they believe there will be more arrests after massive raids on Wednesday. The number of suspects has already risen to more than 50 possible co-conspirators of the group, allegedly led by this man, 71-year-old Prince Heinrich XIII of the House of Reuss. CNN efforts to reach him for comment have so far been unsuccessful. Residents of Heinrich's hometown say the suspicious activity was already well underway. His followers had even demanded citizens ditch their German passports. We were told that we were not German because our passports were not German. We were then given the opportunity to apply for our German origin documents with the Reuss administration, the deputy mayor said. Authorities say the Reichsbürger want to set up a monarchy in Germany and have scores of right-wing extremists in their ranks. Among those arrested, several former soldiers and a former member of German parliament from a far-right political party. German extremism experts warn, like in the U.S., the number of extremists looking to undermine democracy is growing. It's a development which shows that right-wing extremism is moving from the margins to the center, and that protagonists from the scene can imagine overthrowing the state order. It's a very dangerous development. German criminal authorities say they are continuing to identify people possibly involved in the planned coup. And while that plan may have been thwarted this time, groups like Reichsbürger pose an increasing threat to Germany's democratic order.
Aussie rules is spreading its wings around the world, with a branch of the women's game taking off on the other side of the Pacific. Hundreds of American players are now turning to the Australian code. The ABC's Brittany Greiner is stateside.
Go run on it, run on. All right, Rance.
With the Washington Monument as their backdrop, these women might be 16,000 kilometres from the MCG, but they're training for a sport born and bred in Victoria.
Yes, Steph, good hands.
AFL teams in the United States have even adopted similar branding to Australian clubs. Although here in the nation's capital, Claire Conley's team, the DC Eagles, hail from the east, not West Coast.
Yeah, Miriam, right here, right here.
I've moved around the US a lot, and everywhere I've been able to find a US AFL team, and they've become my new family, my new home.
On the hands, on the hands.
Her current club is one of 17 across the United States that has a developing women's side. It's also where Megan Sullivan got her start before moving to the Gold Coast and signing up to play AFL at a state level.
Coming here, it was really hard to get confidence. I kind of played every position and wherever the club needed me, but it was really hard to cement where I felt comfortable, especially with learning all the rules, and obviously the competition is such a higher level.
That's why it was big news when the first American export was signed to the AFLW in 2019.
Sounds good, Olivia. Thank you. An Arizona woman making history. She is the first American female to ever sign a pro contract to play professional Australian rules football.
Essendon's Danielle Marshall remains the only American player to make the leap from the US AFL.
There's no scholarships, there's no pathways really. It was basically just like, hey, I'm going to take a gamble on this. I'm going to buy my own plane tickets, find my own place to stay, find my own local club to play with.
I think the AFL missed the boat.
Player agent Jason Hill says the league should have invested in international pathways when the women's game was in its infancy.
The talent we see now on the park week in, week out in the AFLW is at such a high level that to see someone come from what is a community league anywhere in the world now would be a massive step up.
There were 36 international imports in the AFLW this year. More than half were Irish. That's because clubs have much more success in signing former Gaelic football players who have transferable skills.
Nice kick, Nass.
In the US, Claire Conley says it's still a struggle to source an Aussie rules football or even goals for training.
We have big metal rods that they just sort of hammer into the ground, and it's PVC pipes.
But with more resources, even exchange programs, she's confident the American brand of AFL could grow.
Yours, take it. Yes, Steph.
In the UK, the last surviving dam buster, George Leonard Johnson, has died at the age of 101. The dam busters were specialist British Royal Air Force bombers who carried out a major raid in World War II. The BBC's John Kay looks back at Johnny Johnson's life.
They were the RAF's 617 Squadron, but they'll be forever known as the Dam Busters. And among them, 22-year-old George Leonard Johnson. His mates just called him Johnny. Their daring mission was famously recreated for the big screen. In 1943, they dropped their bouncing bombs to attack German dams.
Nice work, Skipper.
And hit the country's industrial heartland.
It was a thrilling experience. No other way to describe it. Our briefing was to fly across the dam to drop the bomb as near as possible to the centre of the dam. So it was practice, practice, practice.
Born in Lincolnshire in 1921, Johnny lost his mum when he was only 3 years old. He joined the RAF as a teenager and for years rarely talked about the dam busters. But when he was in his 90s, Johnny Johnson returned to Germany with a BBC film crew. He met local people who remembered the raids. Hundreds of civilians were killed during Operation Chastise, as well as 53 of Johnny's comrades from Bomber Command.
I'm lucky, yes, still be alive. I'm lucky that I was with the right crew, in the right place, at the right time. And I feel privileged and honoured to have taken part in that raid. I think it was a great raid. I think it was a tribute to all those who took part, particularly those who gave their lives in pursuing their target.
The men who raided the Rotorua dams were among those to receive their decorations from Her Majesty.
They were honoured at the time with the Distinguished Flying Medal. But it wasn't until 2017, after a high-profile public campaign, that Johnny Johnson was awarded the MBE by the Queen.
She said, nice to see the dam busters still around, and I thanked her for the honour of the thing, and how pleased and honoured I felt to be meeting her for the second time.
As the last of the dam busters, Johnny became well known. But he insisted he was only doing his job in 1943, and always said his public appearances were his way of honouring all the men involved in one of the most decisive moments of the Second World War.
About 30 miles west of Memphis, Tennessee, a small city in Arkansas is making history. Voters in the town of Earl have elected 18-year-old Jalen Smith as their new mayor. The teenager just graduated high school and he's the youngest black mayor in the United States. Taylor Tucker reports.
Feel amazing, unbelievable, breaking barriers, obstacles, just amazing.
Overwhelmed with emotion, Jalen Smith is coming to terms that he's the youngest African-American mayor in the nation. But his win didn't come as a surprise.
I did expect this to be the outcome because throughout my campaign, I was always told to outwork my opponents.
He outscored his opponent for sure, winning the election 218 to 139. A small community now getting national attention.
A lot of people get to see it, like congressmen, celebrities, probably the president probably saw it already. So it's just amazing, getting all these interviews and different things, like speaking with different people about my why and my purpose.
His why, beautifying the city, housing, and improving public safety, starting with a 24/7 police department, plus bringing a grocery store in town, which the city currently lacks. All that Smith knows won't be an easy task.
I'm a little nervous, but throughout my high school time, I've been preparing. I'm a go-getter. So whatever the city needs, I'm going to get.
4 months ago, Action News 5 was the first to travel to Earl, Arkansas to speak with him. In August, he was fresh out of high school, and now his first job has won him the title of mayor.
It's not going to take just me making our city better. It's going to take myself, the city council, the people to work together as a team, collaborative, to move our city forward.
His message to those who believe he might be too young for the position.
No, because I use that as motivation to me, to prove them wrong.
What a remarkable young man. Hey, last word today goes to Helen. She says she was leaving Auckland Hospital today, a hospital that saved her life a few years ago and is right now trying to save her father-in-law's life. She says the protesters thought they'd step towards my car, started shaking their signs, grinning and waving at me. My blood boiled, she says. So I gave them a special wave back on behalf of the amazing medical staff they've been harassing all day. Shame on them, says Helen. Have a great weekend.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening. Kia ora tātou, ko Evie Ashton tēnei. The lawyer for the parents of baby W, the baby at the centre of a blood donor controversy, says she's been told his surgery is finished and that the 6-month-old is doing well. Meanwhile, Starship Hospital has stepped up security because of the high-profile nature of the case and gatherings outside the hospital today. Victims speaking during the sentencing of a forestry company over damage to homes, farms and infrastructure near Tolaga Bay in the 2018 storms have spoken of how they were left numb, wet and dumbfounded. And Jetstar says it will compensate passengers who were forced to spend the night at Wellington Airport after their flight was delayed until after the midnight curfew. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7 o'clock.
On Country Life this week, a geologist with a passion for trees.
I like to match land use to land type. In a lot of these gullies up here, we're planting natives, purely natives, but some for timber production. There's trees that go into nectar.
And in our series, A Year on the Farm, Cosmos out crutching with Alistair and Jenna Bird. Stories from rural New Zealand. Country Life, Friday evening and Saturday morning, just after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Kia ora anō, you're still with Evie Ashton and you're listening to Trending Now. Right now, it's time for Focus on Politics.
You're right to characterise it as a challenging year.
2022 has been another year that's tested the government, fundamental parts of New Zealand's democratic system and the resilience of the people. And it's set the scene for election year. Support for the governing Labour Party has trickled away through the year. National has stabilised and is starting to position itself as a government in waiting. Kia ora, welcome to Focus on Politics. I'm Jane Patterson. As the Christmas trees and decorations go up and the shopping begins in earnest, Parliament too is winding up, heading into the last sitting week before rising for the summer break. While the country's leaders will be looking forward to that break, they also have an eye on the next 12 months, election year.
Come on, you're too scared, eh? It's your fault! Hey! You shouldn't have even come here today! You paused, you losers! Hey! Sorry, they're using the heroes!
If you are on Parliament grounds, you are trespassing. Please leave the area. The grounds of Parliament are closed.
The year began with the